No, I keep my head down.
Keep your head on, but your hat.
Ja, keep my head.
I don't need that.
Du brauchst nicht zum Singen.
Nee,
Deine Brauch-
danke.
Danke, okay.
Na, 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 na.
Da, 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 da. Okay. Okay.
Einigkeit und Recht und Freiheit für das deutsche Vaterland. Danach lasst uns alle streben, brüderlich mit Herz und Hand. Einigkeit und Recht und Freiheit sind des Glückes Wunderwand. Im Ganzen dieses Glückes blühe deutsches Vaterland.
Dankeschön. You can all sit down, and we're going to start the program about German, world famous fairy tales. In German, the fairy tales are called Maerchen. That's an A with an umlaut, and since I didn't have umlaut on my computer, it is A-E. A in German, or
Are you
A-E.
talking to the pale part?
This
Yes.
part. Okay. Okay. Anyway, today's program is going to be a little bit informal, to say the not to say the least, but we're of German descent, so there's a little formality automatically. Yeah. And so you're going to have 4 speakers, and we're going to trade off a little bit. I'm going to do a little history about the German authors that created these tales. They didn't create them, actually. They collected them and described them and wrote books about them. And you'll see here the dates, how early this happened. And then later on, Walt Disney made him world famous. But the Germans did it first with books and illustrations. And some of these illustrations are the precursor of comic books. And you'll see some, and I think I have a few illustrations. The speakers are Renate, Barry, and quite a few of us were so poor we didn't have books. I remember orally these stories, and a few, and then later on, Walt Disney made him famous. And same thing with Andrea, and then Andreas is helping us, and he volunteered. He's a board member of GAS, German American Society. He's a super nice guy. As I said already, he works for Daimler and Freightliner, and is busy flying all over the place, and participates in Oktoberfest with kids games and so forth. So I thought, hey, he's perfect, if he can tell us. But he doesn't remember all the stories either. So we're just gonna, just kind of do it informally. Okay, and then Kurt is going to talk about his Oma, which is his grandmother, German grandmother, that told him oral tales. And that's why I'm giving it away. I have a couple of wisecracks about Kurt, but I think I wrote it down. And then me, and I just collected the pictures off the internet, and then also looked a little bit about the history about these, super important German authors that put these together, and they became famous in Germany. All the parents, they read these stories, and they there was a moral to a lot of these stories. Some of them very negative, and so we started easy with the Grimm Brothers, and those like Cinderella, Snow White, and so forth. They were more positive, and then there's another group of tales written by, I'm giving some of this away, so then I'll go through the information quicker, by a German physician in the 1800s. And then later on he became a psychiatrist. He wrote some stories for his kids, and the stories had a real negative consequences. And so Walt Disney and so forth, as other people said, geez, these German tales are really, terrible and frighten kids. Well, that's what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to behave because these are the consequences. So, and that's called Struwwelpter, Struwwel means mixed up hair or long hair. He didn't want to comb his hair. And then you'll find out what the consequences were. And then the last one was Max and Moritz, and Kurt reminded me of that, and I looked it up a little bit. And very famous, and these two were the most mischievous two kids, and they pulled pranks, I mean, very negative pranks. And it was in the times when kids were misbehaving, there was poverty, parents had to work, they couldn't keep track of their kids running around wild, and so he described in his tales, what some kids could do, and you learn maybe from those bad examples. So those are the really terrible stories. Max and Moritz. Everybody in Germany knows Max and Moritz, and some kids acted like Max and Moritz, unfortunately. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Yeah, I got this thing set up. I think it just says 16 slides, and there's an arrow down here in the computer. Okay, and I'm giving again an introduction, and then since Andreas is our guest, if that's okay or not, we let him go first and describe. He could describe it in either way, in German or English, but today most people here would prefer of English. So Jakob and Wilhelm, the thing that's amazing about this is the poor upbringing they had, and when they started collecting these tales and writing a book that had these tales. The very first book was of 80 fairy tales, and it was published in 1812. They were raised by a widow that had 5 kids. And through thick and thin, they got a university education, became librarians, and because of the librarians, then they had access to books and literature, and collected a lot of them. So the first book of 80 fairy tales, 1812. By the 7th book, they had 211 fairy tales. These fairy tales, these are the nicer fairy tales, Cinderella and Snow White and so forth, about the human nature, simpler times. People look for simpler times, and these tales were so famous because of the story that they told. Okay, now I said already by the mother, and they had 4 others. There were 6 the kids she had. Okay, so the next one is, we'll start with the first 2 Grimm Maerchen or fairy tale stories. The first one, and I wrote down the name of them in German, is Hansel and Gretel, and then Rapunzel is how you say it in German. And our first speaker is going to be Andreas, and then if he doesn't remember one or the other, then there's 6 of them that I have pictures for. And so, Andreas, bitteschön. Yeah, and I'm super glad. I was concerned that he was going to show up, and then, oh, what's here he is. So, danke, danke. Du willst es denken brauchen, ne?
Yeah, no, I'm okay. The biggest challenge probably is to get that earpiece on.
Daimler-Benz, Mercedes.
Well, we build cars, not really microphones.
And not microphones, yeah, okay.
And trucks, of
And
course.
trucks too.
Hey, thanks everyone for having me today. It's a really pleasure. Who of you grew up with the German fairy tales? Yeah, quite a few, but probably 50-50. So, yeah, I grew up with pretty much all those fairy tales that Eddie has prepared here and mentioned, and they're very cool. That's true.
Yeah.
They're pretty brutal. And as a matter of fact, I have a 9-year-old daughter. Her name is Heidi. So she, whoever was here for the carnival party, she was the dancer and having a good time there. But she's not exposed to those kind of stories where, the kid that was sucking his thumb and he chop off the thumb and things like that. So I was actually afraid sharing those stories with her. I was afraid she's gonna have sleepless nights after I tell a few of those. But in preparation for this meeting, so I picked about four fairy tales that I can talk about. It's not as easy as just from memory explaining them, because the detail of those fairy tales as a child I remember much different now as an adult, because there's very deep messages in there for both the children but also for the parents. So I'll dress up and get my first one going. If you maybe want to go to the Rattenfänger von Hameln, if you have this one. I brought a storytelling outfit today. Because I have to look serious, right, as a storyteller.
Oh, perfect.
Once upon a time.
Yeah, look at all the rats that came out.
Once upon a time, the city was pestered with rats and mice, and the city council and the mayor didn't know what to do about it anymore. Mice and rats everywhere, everywhere. All of a sudden, there was this man who showed up. They called him the Colored Man because he was dressed up quite colorful and different. He approached the mayor, telling him, "Hey, I'm here to help you." The mayor said, "What can I help you with?" The colored man said, "Well, I can help you get rid of your rat and mice issue." So the mayor said, "Well, how come you come and approach us about that?" So the colored man said, "Well, this will cost you some money." And those two guys negotiated a deal to pay the colored man quite some chunk of money. So the colored man got out his recorder and he started playing. As he was playing, the rats and the mice came out of all cracks and houses and basements and followed the colored man. As he walked, and all the rats followed him out of the city into the Weser. He took off his clothes, went into the Weser, and kept playing and walking into the Weser. And so did the rats. They followed him, and they all drowned and died. After this happened, he walked back to the city to approach the mayor. "Hey mayor, all the mice and the rats are gone, as I promised you. So now it's time to get paid." Well, the mayor changed his opinion, and the colored man shall not receive any money, and the colored man was unhappy, leaving town. 2 weeks later, the colored man came back, dressed up as a hunter, disguised as in a hunter outfit, and went into town, to the center of the city, and he played his song again. This time, not the mice and rats came out. What came out? The children. The children came out to see him. And as he kept playing, he walked out of the city playing. And so did the children. They followed him outside of the city. It went so quick, none of the parents even noticed that the kids were gone. And he guided them up far away to a mountain, and the kids were never seen again. There were 2 kids, they were too late, and they instantly got blind, deaf, and what's it called when they cannot talk? Dumb. So they cannot share and tell where the colored man went with all the children. So the morale of that story, what is it?
Pay
Pay
the piper.
Pay the piper.
Pay the piper.
And for all the mayors in the world doing all kinds of deals, our children might have to pay the consequences. So I think it's a very deep message, and considering the time and age where this story was taken, I think it's very applicable to what might be going on today.
Andreas,
Yep.
this is a real city, and this is the statue in that city. The Hamlin is in northern Germany by Bremen, a medieval, a small city that has that name, and they have a statue about this legend.
Yep, the city of Hameln.
Hameln. Yeah. They say it a little differently in German.
All right. Ready for story number 2?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good. Sehr gut gemacht. Wunderbar.
See,
Ausgezeichnet.
having a 9-year-old daughter really benefits me because I got to play on the recorder once in a while, so I hope it was not too terrible. Yeah.
That was very good.
Okay, the next story is really near and dear and close to me because I am from Schwabenland.
Oh, you're Schwab.
Schwabenland, yeah, it's South Germany. It's southwestern Germany, and if you guys all know Bavaria, it's the southeastern part, and then Schwabenland is
It's just
Baden-Württemberg is the
it's right next to Bavaria and,
Yeah.
and to the Rhine. That's Schwabenland. My mother was a Schwab, and very nice. So I think very highly of the Schwaben.
Yeah, so a lot of people might know Struwwelpter from their car industry. I mean, I guess a lot of people, and the main city there is Stuttgart. That's that's the main town. So it's the Detroit of Germany, and I've grown up not too far from there, so it's not a surprise that I ended up working for Mercedes, and I'll probably do that here as well for Daimler trucks here. But do you have a picture of that story?
Welches hast du jetzt?
Die 7 Schwaben. It's
Oh
called.
no, I didn't get a picture of that one. So
Okay, but I think it's a story worth telling.
I'm gonna close it.
Yeah. So once upon a time, 7 Schwabian guys, they got together, and I want to introduce them real quick. It's Mr. Schulz, number 1. Number 2 is the Yaki. The 3rd is Marley. The 4th is Jörgli. The 5th is the Mikal. The 6th one is the Hans. And the 7th is the Welki. So they got together, probably at a Stammtisch kind of environment where all the tough guys get together and tell stories of all the accomplishments they can do and may do in their lives. So they decided it's time to do a big adventure. We want to conquer the world. We want to go out and seek adventures and perform great deeds. So they made a plan. The 7 Schwabians, they made a big spear, a long spear, and all the 7 Schwabians, they held on to the spear. And with that spear, they might hike into the big world and perform those great deeds. So as they hiked for the first few days, crossing all kinds of fields, they were about to approach a little town. It was evening, and what happened is that Mr. Schultz, number one, he heard the sound of a hornet. And Mr. Schultz said, "Oh my gosh, I just heard some drums. I just heard some drums." And number two, who is Shaggy, said, "Yeah, and I smell some powder and some matches. I think somebody is going to be after us." And Mr. Schultz, he couldn't handle it anymore. He dropped the spear and jumped over a fence, and since it was the hay season, he stepped on a fork, and the fork slapped him in the face. And he's like, "Oh my God, I give up, I surrender. And all the 7 Struwwelpters ran around with the heads cut off and laid down, I surrender, I give up, we give up." And he got quiet. They all laid on the ground and they looked at each other. Oh my gosh, nothing happened. So they gathered and talked about it, and they said, never ever we're going to share that story, ever to anyone, unless somebody tells it by accident. Second story. Yeah, the second story cannot be compared with the first one because it's way more brutal. As they hiked over some fields, they saw a rabbit. What's called heron?
Yeah.
A hare. A hare was laying in the ground with its 2 long ears and with its big, evil, glassy eyes, looking at the 7 Struwwelpters. And they stared at that rabbit, assuming it's a big monster. What should we do? We cannot run from it. If we run from it, it's going to capture us, it's going to eat us with our skin and hair and everything. So what should we do? We shall be brave. We should go and conquer that brutal big monster. And of course, the last guy was saying, let's run. And Mr. Schultz in the front, he's holding back. I don't want to run. Wait, I'm scared. As the rabbit hears them screaming, the rabbit jumps up and runs away. And the 7 Struwwelpters look after the rabbit. Oh my goodness, that was just a rabbit. And the third story has not quite as nice of an ending. So they got to a river, and the 7 Struwwelpters were not well educated, as there were many bridges along the Mosel River and goes to Germany. Mosel is a mossy, obviously the name says it, Mosel, mossy, quiet, deep river, and the 7 Struwwelpters got to the river. We're gonna cross the river. As they saw a person on the other side of the river, they said, hey, how can we cross the river? Is it safe to cross the river? And the guy on the other side said, what? Which basically means, what are you saying? And the 7 Struwwelpters understood, oh, wait. So Mr. Schultz, the brave one, stepped into the Mosel and drowned as he tried to cross the river. The only thing survived was its head, as it was blown off by the wind to the other side of the Mosel. It landed on the other shore. The 7 Struwwelpters were wondering what happened to Mr. Schultz. And so they looked over and saw his hat sitting right next to a frog. Again, they called over, is it safe to cross? And the frog said, what? And so the remaining 6 Struwwelpters walked into the Mosel and all drowned. And the morale of this story is, now you know why the Struwwelpters hate frogs. Yep, those are the brave Schwabians.
Seven of them.
7 of them. Yeah. And I can guarantee you, anyone who grew up in that area would know that story. And of course, they're being made fun of as they when they gather in groups, right? They talk a lot, but truly they do not know a lot about necessarily about the world and the dangers out in the world, and they look very naive and simple there, so they're sometimes being made fun of because of that story. All right. There was the story about the 7 Schwabians. Want to hear one more? Yeah. I think you have actually a picture about the hare and the hedgehog.
Yep.
So the hare and the hedgehog. I was told it's not a story, it's the truth. Because simply you couldn't make up a story like that.
So it's on the right.
Yeah.
Der Hase und der Igel.
Der Hase und der Igel.
You might have to tell them what an eagle is. The Americans don't know what an eagle is.
It's a hedgehog, right?
Yeah. They don't have it in America.
Oh.
Yeah. Right?
Porcupine, I guess, is the closest thing, right?
Porcupine, yeah.
It's smaller than a porcupine. I don't think it moves quite as fast as a porcupine. It's very low to the ground. Its needle is about this long or so.
Very gentle.
But very gentle. They're very cute animal. But also it's very sensitive to human influence. So if you touch them, they die very easily. Yeah.
Andreas, didn't the eagle, especially because of the story, kind of became the German Mickey Mouse? You know, the Mickey Mouse with the mouse with a pointed nose. This is the hedgehog with a pointed nose and similar type of stories. Anyway.
All right. Let me tell the true story of the hare and the hedgehog. So once upon a time, on a beautiful, beautiful Sunday morning, the sun is shining and the flowers are blossoming.
Just like today.
Just like today. There's no harm in the world. Everything is just great and perfect. As we're getting ready for church Sunday morning and the kids are being dressed, the hedgehog father is looking out over his beautiful land and looking at all the land and the acres and farmland and turnip fields and cabbage fields. And he's thinking, as mother's getting the kids ready, I shall go for a little Spaziergang, a little walk through the fields and check how all the plants are doing. And he's walking out there enjoying the beauty of the Sunday morning. And yeah, he's checking everything out and he runs into the hare. The hare is doing the exact same thing. It's just walking around and checking his cabbage fields. See how my food is doing. And so the hedgehog greets the hare. Good morning, hare. How is it going on this beautiful morning? And the hare completely ignores him. And the hedgehog is telling him, hey, good morning. What's going on? The hedgehog is, the hare is telling the hedgehog, you shall use your feet for something better than walking around. And the hedgehog immediately got very defensive. I'm very proud of my short, crooked, bent legs. And the hare is dismissing him. Go away, leave me alone. So the hedgehog got very angry with the hare and he challenged the hare. Hare, I may be faster than you are, and I challenge you for a race this afternoon. And the hare, he is very excited. He said, oh my goodness, you hedgehog. I'm going to show you who is the better runner. Let's start right away. The hedgehog says, let me eat some lunch first so I can get strong, and I'll meet you this afternoon at 2 o'clock for a race. And the hare is running away very excited because they were betting over a bottle of brandy. So the hedgehog goes home and tells his wife, wife, I'm going to race the hare this afternoon, and I'm going to win. And his wife is telling him, how could you do that? Why would you do that? You're going to lose, you're going to embarrass us. Why could you even consider doing that? The hedgehog tells his wife, you be quiet, wife, and listen to what I have to tell you. And the hedgehog's wife is listening, and the hedgehog is telling him, you and I shall go out this afternoon, and you shall do as I tell you. And she is like, okay, Mr. Hedgehog, I shall do that. So they go out to the field at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and getting ready for a race. So the hedgehog tells his wife, you go down at the end of the field and place yourself at the end of the field. As the hare is running down the field, you're going to tell them, I'm the hedgehog and I'm already here. And so the hedgehog walks down the field and meets the hare. As they meet at the beginning of the field, the hedgehog is telling the hare, are you ready to race? And so they started the race. The hedgehog sprinted, the hare sprinted, and of course the hare is way faster. As the hare is finishing the field, the hedgehog's wife is there. Hare, I'm already here. And the hare is stunned and is turning around, running back to the other side of the field. And there's the hedgehog. I'm already here. And the hare is turning around and running down the field again. And the hedgehog's wife is there. Hare, I'm already here. And the hare is running back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. At the 74th time, the hedgehog is falling over as blood is coming out of his throat and dies on the field. The moral of the story. The moral of the story is never look down on anyone. Respect anyone equally, but also, if you're a hedgehog, marry a hedgehog that looks exactly just like you. Yep, that's the hedgehog and the hare story. Yeah, pretty fun one. Yeah, the hedgehog's certainly smarter than the hare. The hare knew his strength, and his strength is running, not considering too much, thinking about why and what for and how can I use it smartly. So he got outsmarted by the hedgehog. Also there, very interesting and deep message. Okay. Hans, guck in die Luft.
Ah, okay. Now that is from the Struwwelpter, ne?
That's Struwwelpter, that's right.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun, we should do it more often.
Yeah. And different.
Should we repeat it at the German American Society
Yeah.
board meeting or something? Yeah, it'd be fun.
I would say so.
Yeah.
And you're doing great, so.
Yeah. Yeah, since they're not contributing anything else, we may as well tell a few stories. Yeah.
With a little bit of schnapps. So that's him on the left.
Hans, guck in die Luft.
You might have to translate what that means, like the title.
Yep. Hans guckt in die Luft means translated, Hans looks in the air. So Hans looks in the air all the time as he's going to town. On the way to school, he's looking after the birds and the sky and the clouds and the beauty of the earth. Hans doesn't really care too much about anything else or is listening to anyone else. And as Hans approaching with his nose up, chin up kind of attitude, he would walk proudly through the town every day. And guess what? His peers, his friends, his schoolmates don't respect Hans too much. And what happens to Hans? One morning, a dog is crossing his path, and Hans falls down over the dog and laying on the ground, and nobody cared for Hans falling over that dog. Even though that happened to Hans, that did not change Hans. Hans kept chin up his attitude and kept walking quietly, not listening, not considering his awesome peers and friends. And one day, Hans walked straight up to the river with his nose up, and as Hans approached the river, nobody would tell Hans, hey, there's a river coming and you might be in danger. So Hans kept walking and walking and walking, and the fish in the river see Hans be approaching the river, and they're saying, Hans, what are you doing, what are you doing? And Hans did not listen, and Hans stepped right into the water, and the fish were scared, swimming away as Hans plummets into the water, and face down, his butt was sticking out from the sky, and his school bag floated down the river. He was lucky there were some men close by. They saved Hans' life, and they got him out of the water and saved his life. As Hans was standing on the shore looking at the river, the fish came back to see him, and I was told you could hear the fish laughing at Hans because they were so amused about him falling in the water. And his bag was gone, and Hans was wet down to his skin. That's the story of Hans Guck in die Luft. Yeah.
Similar.
I think it's very similar, yeah. People walking around with a cell phone, not caring about their environment, don't making themselves part of the community. As nobody engages into the community doesn't engage in the individual, and makes it for a very lonely environment, and it's much harder to be on your own than it is engaging in a community. Absolutely, I think it's a very true tale that applies to today as well. Yeah. Is there more appetite for stories?
Sure.
Or should we maybe Renate?
Or Renate, mach weiter.
Yeah. The böse Friedrich I have here.
Ah, yeah, he's right there to the right.
Oh, another bad guy. The böse Friedrich.
And can you translate
Yes.
the title, what it means? Böse Friedrich?
The bad Friedrich? Is what it is?
Yeah, bad.
The bad Friedrich. He was a boy.
Or angry Friedrich?
Angry, yeah, like a brat.
Yeah, a brat.
A brat.
Yeah.
Friedrich the brat.
Friedrich the brat.
Friedrich the brat. That's the title in English.
Yeah.
So the Friedrich, yeah, he was a bad guy. Well, he was catching the flies in the house and would whip them out the wings. He would hit the birds with chairs and kills the cats. Yep, that's what Friedrich was like. Even he used his whip to whip his nanny. So one day he approached a little well, and there was a big dog. And the dog was drinking water and it wouldn't mind. Well, Friedrich comes around with his whip and whips the dog. But what happened with the dog? The dog didn't quite like it that much and turned around and bit Friedrich right in his leg. So that the blood would spread out and he would be in agony and pain and scared of his life. So Friedrich ends up in the hospital. So as Friedrich was in the hospital, having to spend weeks and weeks to get healthy again, life in town was nice again. And the dog would live a very great life, eating of Friedrich's food, drinks Friedrich's wine, and Friedrich's cake for dessert. That's the story. Yep. One day you meet someone who's stronger than you, and it might not turn out so well. If you stuck up and think you can control the world as you please with your evil thoughts. So I think it gives us hope to think that the good, there's always justice at the end of the day. So yeah, I think that's good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Vielen Dank. Wunderbar gemacht, ja. And playing, I mean, the Rattenfänger or the Piper and all your stories are perfect. And he didn't have much time to prepare, and so exactly.
Yeah, no, thanks for the idea. Reading those stories as an adult again puts a whole different perspective on it. I mean, lots of thoughts came up and very applicable to today's society and also politics and the way we raise the kids. It's very, very cool. A lot of wisdom to those stories. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me in the meeting. Love you guys.
Danke. Wunderbar.
It's a great jacket.
A great hat.
I got it for Carnival.
Carnival or Und du bleibst hier, wir essen dann auch noch, essen auch in der Pause. Renate, you wanna you're gonna head out?
Oh, this is Renate's one.
Okay.
Du darfst gerne gehen. Jetzt, ich kann so viel gar nicht erzählen. Ich habe auch keine Flöte. Hab gar nicht dran gedacht.
You have Whisker.
Do I have to wear this?
Well, yeah, otherwise, I think some people won't.
Turn it around.
Huh?
The other way. With the microphone in front.
I know it's supposed to be in front.
Herr Mercedes, Andreas Mercedes can help you out right away. Herr Stuttgart.
Well,
Let me get the picture. So this is
Schneewittchen.
Schneewittchen.
Okay.
To the right.
The picture shows you there's a happy ending, all right? Even though this is essentially a murder story, I never realized that the Grimm Maerchen are actually based on quite a bit of cruelty. But Schneewittchen is the lovely one. Schneewittchen hinter den Bergen, bei den 7 Zwergen. Sie muss das Feuer schüren, sie muss das Süppchen rühren, hurtig setzt sie den Tisch, und dann kommen die Zwerge und essen. Well, how did she get there? Because her father, the king, married for the second time after her mother died, so she was quite lonely. And this woman brought 2 daughters who were very uppity, who were used to luxury. And Schneewittchen was brought up to be joyful but humble. So there's a clash. The new queen said, put that child away. And Schneewittchen really had being a humble young child and quite a bit younger, she kind of stayed in the background. But the queen had a mirror on the wall, and the mirror was quite mythical. Spieglein, Spieglein an der Wand, wer ist die Schönste im ganzen Land? Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the loveliest in the land? And then the mirror answered, Mrs. Königin, which is queen, you are the most beautiful in the land. She was satisfied with that. But that lasted a number of years. Schneewittchen grew into a lovely young woman. And so one day when she inquired of mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the loveliest in the land? The mirror answered, my queen, you are the loveliest here, but Schneewittchen is 1,000 times lovelier than you. And the queen just about died. She turned yellow. She made fists and she made a resolution that cannot continue. So she found a solution. She hired a hunter. He brought his nice long shotgun, and he was told, take Schneewittchen into the woods, and as proof that you killed her, I want her liver and her kidneys. And so the hunter takes Schneewittchen deep into the woods, and then he raises the gun and realizes he cannot possibly shoot this girl. She is such an innocent, trusting little girl or young woman. So he says, go, run, 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 run. They're deep in the woods, but anyhow, she runs. And the hunter has to find a solution if he wants to keep his head, so therefore he quickly shoots a deer, takes the liver and the kidney back to the castle, presents it to the queen, and the queen sends it to the kitchen, has the cook prepare it, and then she eats liver and kidney, thinking she eats the child's Schneewittchen liver and kidney. She was satisfied. And so this young girl keeps running, walking and walking and walking. It comes nightfall, she spots a small little hut. Deep in the woods, she has no idea where she is. And so she goes in, and everything is miniature. A table, 7 chairs, 7 plates, with food already prepared and on the plates. And so she's a considerate young woman, and therefore she drinks 1 sip from the wine, and she eats 1 bite from this plate, and she takes 1 bite from that plate. So, barely noticeable that it has been eaten from. By that time she is so tired, she just simply takes, and she tries to go, but the beds are different sizes. There's only one bed that into which she fits, and that's the one for the seventh dwarf. So she lies down and sleeps, dead to the world, exhausted. And then comes evening, and the 7 dwarfs come home, and they enter. Who has been here? Something is different. Yes, something is missing on my plate. Oh, on my plate too. They find that there's one morsel missing on each plate. And then they go a little further and look at their beds, and they come to the 7th bed, and there's the girl sleeping. They are speechless. How did she get here? What is she doing here? And each one has a little lantern, so they just kind of hold the lantern over her. But they're not disturbing her. And when Schneewittchen wakes up in the morning, and she opens her eyes and she sees 7 dwarves, not even all the same size, each one a different size. In front of her, she just speechless, she's scared, she doesn't know where she is and what is she doing. So the dwarfs want to know, why are you here? She takes a deep breath, and then she tells the story of her stepmother. And the dwarfs give her permission. Stay here. We keep you. You tend to all the domestic chores. You will light our fire, and you will make our beds, and you will make our fire, and cook the food, and you will have everything ready in the evenings, because the dwarfs worked in the mining business for gold and silver. Well, this is peaceful, yes, all taken care of. And then, of course, at the castle, the queen has an unsolved problem. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the most beautiful of them all? And the mirror answers, Queen, you are the most beautiful here, but Schneewittchen is 1,000 times lovelier than you. So the hunter, by the way, has fled the country. And so she has to come up with a new idea. I'll dress like an old woman from the woods, and I'll go there, and I'll take care of Schneewittchen all by myself. Well, the dwarves suspect that the queen is not going to give up so easily, so she has been told, you don't open the door for anyone. Schneewittchen sees this, looks through the window, and there's this old woman with something, offering some wares, and she feels sorry and has pity and opens the door. And the queen had planned, and she brought something, but as part of a dress. So you put this on, and you tighten it down the front, but what she did is she wrapped it around the neck and tightened and tightened and tightened till Schneewittchen passed out. She did not take it off either. She just Schneewittchen fell to the ground, and the queen just simply disappeared. And of course the queen was totally convinced that's the end of it. Fine, go home. Ask the mirror. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the loveliest of them all? Well, queen, you are the loveliest here, but Schneewittchen, hinter den Bergen, behind the mountains by the 7 dwarfs, is 1,000 times lovelier. The woman just about had a heart attack. She was out of control. So she had to come up with something different. Again, this would leave absolutely no room for recovery, for change. So she took an apple, and the apple was red and bright yellow, most appealing. And she doctored it. And then she went back again, a little old woman that comes and offers, and then she knocks on the door, and Schneewittchen again takes pity on this old, haggard-looking woman, opens the door, and the woman says, "So glad to find somebody. I also have a reward for you," opening up, and hands her the apple. Well, the queen was afraid. They had actually done something very clever. On the right side, she had injected poison in the apple. On the left side, it was clean apple. So she said, "Do you want to share this with me?" Yes. So she cuts it in half, and the red part goes to Schneewittchen, and the other part is for her, and she eats. And so this was really effective, because Schneewittchen took one or two bites and just simply crumbled, and on the floor nobody could revive, nothing. She was out. She didn't breathe anymore. And the seven dwarfs come home, look at this, and they said, "We can't put this lovely woman underground. Let's find a glass sarcophagus, casket, put her in, and put her on the mountain top, so our world will see this lovely, lovely young woman." They did. And days went by. Schneewittchen didn't breathe, really. And Schneewittchen was considered dead, even by the seven dwarfs. Nobody could survive poison. And then one week went by, and then came a nice day, and a prince is out in the woods on his stallion, and he sees something blinking. What? A casket up on the mountain that has to be explored. He rides up, and he says, "I can't leave this lovely woman sitting up here being bleached by the sun. I have to get this casket home into the casket now. This is not the queen, this is a prince." And so he starts rattling it and moving it, and it shakes, of course, getting it moving, and suddenly Schneewittchen opens her eyes, gags, spits out the red apple, and sits up and says, and the prince is absolutely amazed. And the prince says, "I will take you home." And but anyhow, let me just find it. So the queen is very convinced she is rid of this interloper. So she goes to the mirror again and says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the loveliest of them all?" I have to change something. It was the king's son. He was a prince, but anyhow belonged to the king's family. So the mirror answers, Queen, you're the loveliest here, but the young queen is 1,000 times lovelier than you. Well, she cussed, she railed, she flailed, but of course now there is a queen. It's not the little girl any longer, or the young woman of no repute. And at first she didn't want to come to the wedding. She was invited. But, I skipped the whole part. To shoot the queen had interfered one more time. Namely, Schneewittchen had appeared in a beautiful outfit. And anyhow, I'll skip part of it, okay? You can go home and read it. We'll leave it at that. Anyhow, Schneewittchen is now the young queen, married to the heir apparent. And the two daughters of the mother-in-law really have no place left. They are nothing. Fine, we'll leave it at that. I skipped something, but it got too long. You all know Cinderella, don't you? I had to sit down this morning and read the stories because I called some of it Aschenputtel, for example, which is the German word for Cinderella. And it has to do because this girl is banned to the kitchen and has to sleep in the ashes. They left the ashes in after cooking at the end of the day, so that was warm. Actually, it was a nice, warm place to sleep, but you looked like hell when you woke up the next morning. And so this is the story of Aschenputtel. Again, we are dealing with a jealous stepmother. I don't know what in those days, it was the theme of the day, I guess. Stepmothers. In fact, I'll interject something totally different. Since we all have these stepmother stories, and the stepmother is always vindictive. I was about 4 years old visiting family with my mother, so we were already bombed out, and we were taken in by one of her brothers, who was married the second time. And so this woman here has suddenly, 3 or 4 more people running around in addition to her own children, and it's still wartime. And that high? And she wants to tell me something that I shouldn't do or shouldn't have. And I said, "You can't talk to me like that. You're only a stepmother." That is what you got from these stories. Stepmother was just unacceptable and vindictive. That the two of us seemed to come together when you were little. And so Cinderella, Aschenputtel, her mother died, and she went, and they buried her, and Aschenputtel went every day and cried her eyes out. Her heart is broken. She is so alone. And then comes, the king remarries, and here comes a stepmother. The stepmother takes one look at this girl and says, "We really don't need you. You can go, you have to work for your food from now on. You're not privileged. Go to the kitchen and help in the kitchen." Yes. Which meant that she got one frock, some kind of a something with, dirty linen thing. She had to sleep in the kitchen, and as I said, they left the ashes in, and then the ash, but it was a warm environment, so that's why you slept. There were no adjacent bathrooms, so you had to go out to the fountain, to the well, to wash yourself, and then came a lot. But she had some interactions with the other householders, and then one day the king wanted to take them all to a big affair, a big ado. And he asked his stepdaughters, and of course the new queen, and he wanted to include this little girl from his first marriage, little Cinderella. Well, fine. What did the two stepdaughters wanted? What do you need? We need pearls, we need diamonds, we need beautiful dresses, and we need shoes. And Aschenputtel was willst du haben? Oh, I want the twig that hits your hat when you ride through the woods. Bring me back a twig. All right, so he brings back a twig. Fine. And Aschenputtel takes the twig, is very grateful, plants it on her mother's grave, and lo and behold, this little twig develops roots, becomes a beautiful tree, and it's a hazelnut tree, a big bush. And so situations develop. And they're invited to come to a ball. And of course, the children, the stepdaughters of the king, know exactly, because they have the clothes now, and the jewelry, and the diamonds. And they get ready, and then the stepmother just simply says, "Get out of my way, you are dirty, you have no place to go, you have no clothes, no shoes. Come on, go back to the kitchen." That's when Aschenputtel decides, I'm going to the well, I'm going to wash my face and my hands, and then I'm going to the tree on her mother's grave and cry. While she's there are 2 turtle doves and 2 pigeons, and they hear her, and they want to know, what do you need? Well, I have no clothes and no shoes, and I can't go with my father to this celebration. So they just simply manifest and drop it. Silver and gold dress, 2 beautiful little shoes for her dainty little feet. She changes clothes and she shows up. Now, of course, she is stunning. She makes an impression on this young son of the king. And he takes her, she walks in the door, he takes her and says, "I want to dance with you." Others come and say, "Could we please dance with this young woman?" "No, today she is only mine." So they dance the entire evening. Well, this is repeated a second time. Again, they're trying to find out who this girl is. Of course, the queen recognized her. But by the time the queen gets back, Aschenputtel is lying in her ashes and is just as dirty as she was before. So that could not have been Aschenputtel. Again comes an invitation, and this repeats itself. And each time she comes up lovelier, and the king's son sees her at the next ball and says, "You and I will dance, nobody else will break in, and I'm keeping you." And that happened a third time. And then comes finally the end where she has these beautiful, oh, and the stepmother, of course, is inventing ways of cutting that out. So she puts tar out over the stairs, and as Aschenbrödel tries to escape without being recognized, she loses one slipper right there in the tar, and that's why she keeps running. Well, that slipper becomes kind of the, how shall I say, the focal point, because the two stepsisters would like to become the wives of this beautiful prince. But it has to be, and in order to make it, for the prince to truly find the right girl, she has to fit into this little slipper. Well, neither one fits into the slipper. One is willing to cut off her toe, the other one is willing to cut off a heel, and they do. And you know, the blood just appalls this prince, and he says, "You are not anywhere near me again." And then comes Aschenbrödel, and she slips her foot in, and it's a perfect fit. So what did he do? He took her home. And they had a lovely life together.
We have one more story from the court. Do you want to tell your story? Duncan. Yeah, so court, you have to speed up, so we're going to have
What I was going to do, 2 hours of...
He's prepared for 2 hours, and now he's going to have 5 minutes, because we're missing Essen. You want to talk this way, or put it around you?
No, I'll talk this way.
No, some people won't be able to hear you. Back there.
Just hold it.
Yeah, hold it like this. You can do this.
Yep.
You hold it for
You
us.
hold it. Hold it for him if he won't hold it.
Up to Leva. I mean, you know, the dedication I have for Grow, I'm up here and I have to hold this microphone for him. Up to Leva. Okay, quit.
Although I think everybody's hungry. Why don't I continue after we eat?
Okay, is that a deal? And then
We should just
or
finish.
wrap it up.
Yeah.
Why don't we wrap it up and
So go ahead.
tell us your
Have you seen the size of this book?
No. The books we can study later on and we maybe pass around. But why don't you? And that's what we're kind of talking about. Tell your Oma's oral stories that she told you in Poland, where we were Polish occupiers, his family, my family.
Okay, this goes back to the 1880s when
No, that's
my
not.
Oma was born. They didn't have all the books. They didn't have all the books and televisions you have nowadays. So a lot of the stories were told from grandparents to parents to the kids. And the only way you could find out what it was all about is we had to wait for the Grimm Brothers to come out with a book. This is actually Wilhelm Busch, Max Moritz. And before we eat, let me tell you one story about Max Moritz. In 19...
I'm going to get Max and Moritz.
Yeah,
Can you hold it?
Max Moritz. We lived in Poland and from 1940...
He's doing both.
1940 to 1945 when we were forced to leave. And the house that we lived in, I remember we had Moritz. So when we packed up, it was just after Christmas of 1944. And the gift I got for Christmas that year, I remember, the old Germans would remember, and a Knarre is a carabiner, or the machine gun was made out of wood, and you turn it, and it made noise. So I thought, well, the Russians or the communists are behind us. We're going to hold them off. We're going to take these pictures that we're going to leave on the wall. And so we took the machine gun along on a trek, hoping that they would save us. But as people told us later on, when they catch up with you, they see you have a gun, you're going to be shot first. So anyway, Max Morris got left behind. Now, if any of you, I don't think there's anybody here lived during that time, every house had to have a picture of a Führer, Adolf on the wall, and next to Hermann Goering, and that we didn't have that. We had Max Moritz.
Yeah,
So,
much better.
anyway, and
So you're gonna tell your Oma story? Did she, at least one story
not before we eat.
But Sharon wants to complete your
Oh, okay.
videotape.
Anyway, after the war, we had a lot of people move into the smaller villages, smaller towns that were bombed out from the big cities. And so people were crammed into very small quarters. I remember we were, there's a Oma and an aunt and a cousin. There were 8 of us in one room. It was an apartment, it was part of the farm, a house, a room in the farmhouse that we lived in. And for entertainment in the evening, Oma would tell the stories, and stories about how when she grew up in the Ukraine, when she was little, they had to watch out because the wolves were roaming freely, and so if you didn't behave, the wolves were going to come and get you. So anyway, our grandmother, there were 4 of us boys. Our brother was 4 years older than I am. And before we went to sleep, we had to go out to in German it's a Klo.
Outhouse.
Outhouse. We didn't have indoor plumbing like you have here. And so, and that was, we had to go through the Hof, past the, what we call Misthaufen, the manure pile. In northern Germany, they have the manure pile in the Hof out of view. Now, if you go to Bavaria or the Schwabenland, they have the Misthaufen in front of the house, and the burger, the inhabitant of a town would be measured by the wealth of the Misthaufen they had from the house. Yeah. And I don't know who had the big Misthaufen, the Bavarians or the Schwabs. He won't say. So, anyway, then after the story of the wolves, they're going to get you, so we had to walk past the Misthaufen sometimes in the winter, You had to watch out where you stepped up. Sometimes it was frozen over. Sometimes there wasn't. So before we finished our job, or reason we went out before we were escorted back by our brother, and then we went to sleep, and he tried to sleep, thinking about the wolves, but you're safely inside now. And let's see, what else was there?
Well, you're gonna pass the book around,
Oh, the book, yeah,
illustrations.
if anybody would like to look at this,
Well, instead of passing, why don't we leave it on the table and we can pass by?
yeah, okay, that's good.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay,
So you wanna wrap it up?
I hope you remember, I didn't use these words quite often, Mr. Hoffmann, but he calls it something else. Especially when we play golf and he misses a good shot.
Sometimes I call my target.
Okay, should we wrap it up? You remember, Danke Kurt, the wolves, and they didn't get you, and
True story.
yeah, Nancy, yeah.
One of the things I was reading, trying to do some research on what books to bring out, was that they changed the, all the bad older women, the mothers, they're changed to stepmothers to keep the sanctity of motherhood intact. So it was all changed to the bad stepmothers. And so blame it on, hey, we gotta make this politically correct, I guess. Even back then.
I'm multitasking. I'm going to wrap it up here real fast. And we took some time here and very good stories. I mean, Andreas did a fantastic job, even decorating and playing, and Renate, very good. I mean, she looked all that up good, and his oral Oma story, and Andy brought the book. And the book that he brought is of Max and Moritz, and they were very rambunctious, evil, spoiled brats, and there's 9 stories or something like that in the book, but the illustrations in the 1800s, and they say the comic books had their start with a lot of these personally drawn illustrations in Germany, and that many years ago. And I was going to go on one other thing. This Max and Moritz, for example, this is the second story. It's with chickens. They crawl them real quick. They crawl on the roof and with lions and bait for the chickens, or maybe they were dead anyway. Somehow they pulled the chickens out, and then the story is the woman came and looked. The chickens were gone. And so she beat up her dog because she thought the dog ate the chickens. Anyway, these are kind of nasty. They're the nasty characters, these two, Max and Moritz. I know I'm going to wrap it up. There were 3 books here and 3 main authors. The Grimm Brothers, 2 of them, that wrote these German tales, fairy tales. And then Struwwelpter, that was written by, again, I'm repeating it, by a German Hoffmann, a doctor and psychiatrist for his own kids. And those were, that's where Struwwelpter with the hair and the fingernails and a thumb sucker that got his thumb cut off. These are kind of negative tales in order to teach kids to behave Struwwelpter, he didn't cut his fingernails, he didn't comb his hair, and the reason for that, the moral of the story was, nobody liked the guy looking that way with the fingernails and so forth. So there was a moral. This was a doctor that wrote the book, Hoffmann, and the third book with these fairy tales is this one, and that's written by Wilhelm Busch, also all around the 1800s is where these were written, and this was the pranksters. I mean, you talk about evil boys, two of them pulling off all these stunts. Oh, and the last one, and I'll finish with that, let me show you. And the last story here, or one of the last stories, is they broke into a bakery and they got a little bit back of what they did. They broke in and were looking for free pastry and so forth, and somehow they fell into the dough and they got cooked and baked. Baked, I guess would be the better bakery, right word, yeah. But they didn't die. They ate some of the dough and were able to get out of the baked shell. Anyway, okay, we'll conclude on that. So 3 main books, if you want to read some of this or look at it, is that you said the 3 books and 3 famous authors. Okay, so we're going to break now for our meal, and then we'll wrap things up in about 20 minutes.
Hey,
Dankeschön, gut.
Eddie,
Yep.
do me a favor,
Yep.
put it back to Max and Moritz.
Max and Moritz.
Yeah, put it back. I want to make a comment on that.
Okay.
I knew you when you were about that age. And I think that's you and your brother there.
Oh yeah, I was never called Max. I was always called Audi, and my twin brother was called Harry. It was not Moritz or
But
Max.
your hair, the hair was like
The hair was like that. Yeah. The hair, no, wait a minute.
It translates.
I had hair. Now I have it. Now it looks like one of them there. I don't know which one is Max and which is Moritz. I don't know either. But anyway, famous German brothers. Are they brothers or just evil, rambunctious, misbehaving juvenile delinquents? Okay, thanks for coming. And you want to say it again?
What's the food?